Okay, folks, so now we're talking about native content, which is one of the recent in the last, 5 or 10 years buzzwords for, where's my slide? And there it is. Used to be called advertorial, and basically this is where the advertiser runs his or her content on the site, in the magazine, or on the magazine's website, and it looks like magazine content. The typeface is similar, the layout of the page is similar, the tone is similar. Sometimes it's even created by the magazine's editors or special people who are employed to develop native sort of content that fits in the magazine, but that also advertises the products. These are different kinds of native advertising. Print advertisement camouflaged as editorial is a disguiser, so there are different kinds here. So this is an interesting hybrid because this is it's an ad, but it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, I think is one way to put it. Maybe it's a little bit like a DJ Reed on the radio station. We'll be getting to that later, especially if the DJ embellishes and sort of gets into it and kind of blesses the product. So it's an interesting kind of content that's neither fish nor fowl. Interesting to think about and look at, but there's some rules about how far you can go with it. Now let's kind of go back. We're coming to the end of our discussion on print. You'll remember that there are several key ways we use to differentiate media types and to evaluate the media types. One is just a cost basis, and the way we equalize cost is how much does it cost for 1,000 impressions? And we remember that an impression is what? One person seeing an ad one time. That is an impression. If I see an ad on Tuesday and see it again on Wednesday, how many impressions is that? That is 2 impressions. So cost per 1,000 impressions is one way to evaluate different media. The other way, more important way, is by quality of the impression. How long do I have with the advertisement? If it's a billboard I'm driving by at 60 miles an hour, it's 3 seconds maybe. If it's a direct mail piece, it could be an hour. Okay, so how long does the impression last? And then there's some other ways to differentiate among impressions too. Sight, sound, motion. And we'll get to that in a minute. So those are the 3 ways to evaluate media types. So given that, how do we evaluate a magazine impression? Okay, so similar to the direct mail piece, of course, I don't normally have the number of pages and the ability to do different formats and sizes and die cuts and insert things. I can't really do that. I have some constrictions in working with a magazine. I have a certain type, size of the page, so many pages I can afford. But just as with a direct mail piece and with all print, magazine's a combination of words and images. And magazines can stimulate the imagination, and this is what I'm going to go back to some catalog copy now, but it's the same with both. You remember the Don Staley, J. Peterman words? Okay, there's a simple picture of a dress, and then there are words next to it about being on the Côte d'Azur, and the Riviera is what that is, right? And how it feels to wear these pants and what they're made out of, and the wind's blowing, and the Duchess says, "Hello, how are you?" So I would argue that, and I'm not the only one, that print can stimulate your imagination just the way a good book can stimulate your imagination. You create images in your mind to match the words. And so in terms of quality of impression, a print ad, even with its constrictions in terms of length and how many pages and etc., if it's cleverly done and well done, can still engage your imagination and your mind and get you involved and strengthen the quality of the impression. And again, just as with the catalog, what's the experience of reading a printed magazine versus an online magazine? And again, just as with the catalog, you really have the whole thing to deal with when you're holding a magazine or when you're holding a newspaper, okay, versus reading the Times online. It's just different. You're exposed to more things you may not have thought to look for. Categories, types of products, topics you might not have thought to look at, you look at. So that's definitely one difference. In terms of the CPM comparison now among media, we've shown this chart a number of times so far in the lectures, but this is a major media CPM comparison. You've got television on the left, then radio, online, out-of-home, and on the right is print. And you'll see the magazine CPM, which is for a full-page color ad, averages a little less than $15 a thousand. So it's definitely not the least expensive, but it's not the most expensive in terms of CPM. And here is the quality of impression differentiators I was reaching for a second ago. So we talked about depth of sale. That's the time you can spend with the ad. Okay. Sight, sound, motion affects the quality of the impression. And what you mostly have with print is sight, right? Not a lot of video running unless it's on the website. But with the printed matter, it's sight. No sound, no motion. Is it avoidable? Okay. So with out-of-home, we said it's basically unavoidable. Okay, if you're going by it, you're going to have to see it. But with a magazine, it's very easy to miss an ad. Measurability is the other, also affects the quality of the impression. Here are advantages and disadvantages of magazines. You can align with specific content. Okay, so whether you're picking the Thrasher magazine because you're selling a special t-shirt or hats or whatever it is to reach the skateboarding audience, I can also, within a magazine, choose editorial. So if I'm in one of the classic, mom's magazines like Better Homes and Gardens, there's usually a food section and there's a beauty section. So I'm going to want to put my beauty ad in the beauty section, ... So I can align with specific content. I can also do this advertorial or native approach that we talked about. I can reach lots of people with some of these huge circulation magazines, or I can reach very upscale people with magazines. Color reproduction is very good. Magazines have a long life. They're passed along. I can do paper order deals with some magazines. You're not going to do it with Condé Nast, but there are some magazines that will give you paper order deals should you want to do them. So you'll pay not on a CPM basis, but you'll pay every time somebody orders your product or service using a special code that can be tracked to the specific magazine. Good depth of sale, possible. It can be good for direct. Disadvantages has less space than direct mail. Closing dates for many of the magazines are ways in advance. For response medium, you're not always sure when the magazine gets into someone's hands via the subscription or via newsstand sales. It's not just on one date that it drops. So that's why it says it's kind of varied distribution, and it's a very avoidable medium. So we have talked about, we did review Tabasco. We talked about direct mail and magazines. We had a quiz after direct mail. We had a quiz after magazines. I'm going to do a little more Tabasco reviewing. I'm not quite done with that because you're doing them now every week. I know you have finished by now. You have finished your out-of-home Tabasco. That was due on the 13th of September. On the 20th, your newspaper was due. And the 27th, your magazine, MMJ, Media Journey, is due. So this is the story with our lecture here. We're done with print. Next, we're moving to broadcast and electronic media from now on. The first one we'll talk about is the first one, which is radio. Here's your reading in our terrific textbook. And you can expect questions on the quiz to come right out of your textbook. So it's a relatively short book. It's a very good book. Please keep reading it. And that is the end of the lecture. Thank you, class.